Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, and for today's Wednesday show, I'm joined by Aaron Stokes, our Newcastle United editor. You'd probably be usually tuning in to hear the delicate tones of Simon Bird from the Daily Mirror, but he's off on his holidays this week. So Aaron has kindly stepped in to fill the void, and we're going to do a Q&A, all things Newcastle United. Thank you to everyone who's got in touch, whether that be over X or via email. I'll remind you guys of the email address. So if you ever want to send in any questions, feedback, thoughts, comments, whatever, you can do. We read each and every one of them. The email address is theeibwpodcast@reachplc.com. If you're listening on our audio channel, thank you as always. Please do consider leaving us a rating and review. And if you're on YouTube, get into the comments, give the video a thumbs up, share it as well, and hit subscribe. And for those lucky people who are watching, you will be able to see our new studio. It's not complete yet, but it is a start. We've got a brand new logo, which we revealed last week, and we've now got a brand new banner behind us that you can see, brand new desk as well. And in the next few weeks, we'll have a couple of bookshelves either side of the banner that you can see with lots of interest in Newcastle United memorabilia. So we are looking forward to getting the studio finished once and for all. Thank you for sticking with us, but hopefully it looks a little bit more pleasing on the eye. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the background definitely looks a bit more pleasing. I can't say that I personally look a bit more pleasing than Simon Bird, the silver fox that usually sits in this chair on a Wednesday, but I'll do my best.
Yes, well, I hope you'll do just as well as Simon, because this show has proved very popular, but you are a welcome substitute for the Daily Mirror's Newcastle United writer. Aaron's actually done nothing to contribute to this brand new studio. He's come in and it's all been set up for him.
Yeah.
Very lucky, aren't you?
Yeah, very lucky. I mean, some of us are quite busy, but yeah, it's looking good. It's looking very good.
Right, shall we kick off with our first question?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Right, the first question is from Ryan D, who got in touch over Twitter and said, will Eddie Howe drop Joelinton or Longstaff or both for Fulham? And it's a really timely question because going up on our website, chroniclelive.co.uk, in the next few hours or so is a panel piece where myself, you, Aaron, Lee Ryder, Kieran Kelly have all given our views on whether, or not whether, on who should be starting in that midfield three. It is a question everybody's asking across social media, and I imagine in the pubs and clubs as well. But we'll concentrate on how Ryan's put the question to us. Do you think Eddie Howe will drop Joelinton or Longstaff or both for Fulham?
Well, I think it's like what we were saying on the Monday show in terms of them dropping both. We can't see that happening, can we? Purely because history suggests Eddie Howe is a man who likes very little change from week to week. He doesn't make bold, sweeping changes. You even saw that in the Carabao Cup earlier this season where he named a very, very strong team. So I think the chances of dropping one of them is definitely greater than dropping both of them. A lot of people on social media, a lot of people in the bars and the clubs, as you mentioned, will be talking about the fact Sean Longstaff needs to drop out. But again, looking back at history, Eddie Howe has proven, very, very reluctant to do that in recent seasons. I mean, last season alone, only Fabian Schär, Anthony Gordon and Bruno played more than Sean Longstaff, which goes to show, just how crucial he's been to this team. As we said on Monday, and as we've both written in the panel piece, we think it's time for a midfield three of Bruno, Joelinton and Tonali. I think if you can make that work, that's got to be the three going forward. Sean Longstaff is a fantastic, energetic option off the bench. And look, I know it's a Q&A where I'm meant to be giving all the answers, but how do you give the answers of Eddie Howe when, it's so hard to get into his mind? His teams are so hard to predict week in, week out. Never mind when he's got five options trying to get into three places.
He often does something that you just don't expect. I don't think many people felt Jacob Murphy would start against Wolves. I think people thought it would be Barnes on one side, Gordon on the other, and he went for Murphy. And in the end, Barnes had to come off and win the game. I mean, I do think it's time for Tonali to start, probably for Longstaff, well, most certainly for Longstaff. But I don't think Joelinton is as secure in that spot as he often would have been before, and I don't think he's had a good start to the season. I even think Bruno in the past few games, and then you chuck in his international break, I don't think he's had a good time of it of late, but of course he's different level to Sean Longstaff. It's going to be a really interesting team sheet, but I wouldn't actually be surprised if it is the same midfield three that started against Wolves. I think it very easily could be Longstaff, Bruno, and Joe Linton, with Tonali and Willock coming off the bench later in the game.
Yeah, look, this is Eddie Howe, as we've said. It wouldn't be a great surprise. I think what would the reaction be to that though? Saturday afternoon, it's 2:00. We've got the team sheets. There would be one overriding emotion, that would be disappointment and fury that Sandro Tonali's not in that team, because it's not like he's a £55 million player who we're all desperate to see. He is all those things, but he's proven it. He was fantastic for Italy in midweek, playing twice, showing that he's fit enough. And every time he's played in Newcastle, in a Newcastle shirt since he's came back, he's looked like he hasn't missed a beat. So I think it's time to give him a go. I think the only question is what midfield works best with him and Bruno in it, because you're not going to drop your captain. Sandro Tonali needs to come back in. And as we said on the Monday show, I think the spotlight now turns to Joe Linton, not only because of his Howe's love of playing Sean Longstaff, but also because Joe Willock's there again. And Joe Linton has been fantastic on the left side of that midfield three, but Joe Willock offers, a lot of different things. He offers more going forward. He's maybe not as physical and maybe not as robust, but
he's probably more pacey than
yeah, he's
though.
pacey. Yeah, 100%. As we said on Monday, he offers something that the other four maybe don't, and that is pace and maybe a little bit extra in the final third. So it's a really, really intriguing debate. I think a lot of people will have different views on it. I mean, that panel piece that you mentioned, I think 6 of us have done it. 4 of us said it should be Tonali, Bruno, Joe Linton, and the other 2 say he needs to start the midfield 3 that ended it at Wolves, and that's Tonali, Bruno, Willock. So that just goes to show.
That would be so not the Eddie Howe style, though.
It wouldn't, but, he sent a clear message on Sunday, didn't he? At half-time. There wasn't the right energy that he wanted, and he needed to make a change. And I think it was also a not-so-subtle jibe to the players that you are playing for your positions now. And Joe Linton and Sean Longstaff are on notice a little bit. Not through anything they've done, but just because the quality is so good now. They've got so many options. So, as I say, it's fascinating. It's the one talking point of the week, I think, more than any others, more than Barnes, more than who starts at left back. It's just who starts in that midfield 3. But I think he makes a change on Saturday.
You do? Barnes at left wing?
Yes, Barnes left wing. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts Murphy, because, Eddie Howe, again, like Longstaff, really rates him, really relies on him, trusts him. But for me, sitting here, if I'm picking the team, I think you've got to throw Barnes in from the start, even at the risk of sort of damaging Gordon and his ability by putting him on the opposite flank. And I think you've got to bring Sandro Tonali into that middle.
I would play Barnes, but I've got a sneaky suspicion it would be Gordon on the left and Murphy on the right.
Again.
But if he does bring in Barnes and he does bring in Tonali, then that is probably going to make him very dizzy, because he doesn't like to make changes, 100%. As we've said. And that then shuts down, I think, the talk of, just Kieran Trippier coming for Tino Livramento. Can't see that happening. Sorry to disappoint you. And then the talk at left back.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, if you're asking me which one I think is more likely to happen, I can see a change at left back happening above a change in midfield and a change on the flank.
Well, he's got this really interesting sort of dynamic now, doesn't he, where from week to week we don't actually know who's going to be starting at left back, because Lewis Hall started the season, had a little bit of a tough time against Southampton when Newcastle were, sort of under the cosh, and ever since he's struggled to really nail down that spot, which we all thought he did. We all thought Lloyd Kelly was coming in to be a centre-back, not a first-choice left-back. So, again, who does he start? I don't think anyone can, definitively say he's going to start Lewis Hall, he's going to start Lloyd Kelly, but this is the beauty of it. We've been crying out for solid options off the bench. Eddie Howe wants 2 fighters in each position at the minimum, and he's got it in most positions now.
Do you think the message would have been on Monday morning when the players arrived at Benson that there's only 4 of you that are certain of a place in the starting 11 on Saturday? The rest of you have to go this week and really show me you're worthy of a place in my starting 11. Or do you think, is that the Howe type? Because I don't think that is what he would do. I think he has a game plan in mind, and I'm not sure that is the message he would kind of send out.
I don't think he would ever come out and say there's only 4 of you that are guaranteed. I think his message in public to us and in private to the players has always been, there is 11 places up for grabs. And, how many times have we sat in a press conference with Eddie Howe and says, is X next going to start? Is he ready to start? And Eddie Howe's response is always, we'll see how he does in training this week. There's always that, subtle answer where he doesn't like to give much away, but I think it is true. We sit here and say, on paper, there is probably 4 players that are going to start. Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, if he's fit, Nick Pope, Fabian Schär. You know, there's probably a couple of others. But Eddie Howe behind the scenes will not be seeing it like that.
I guess so, yes, obviously, I mean, for him to come out and say that would be quite something. But what he will definitely have wanted to have seen in the days leading up to this Fulham game are his players given absolutely 100% on the training pitch. And anyone that doesn't will provide him with the answer to the team sheet on Saturday.
100%. And that is potentially a way for Sean Longstaff and Joe Linton to actually nail down their spots, is to make sure that behind the scenes, you know, they're performing as well as they are out on the pitch. So, yeah, really, really interesting, dynamics in a couple of spots, which, as I say, is what we want.
Yeah, I bet there's been some tasty tackles flying in this week, all because they want to start on Saturday against Fulham. And the Sean Longstaff Tonali debate, which has been going on, is also linked to another question, another topic which is really taken a hold, Aaron, on social media, and that is the future of Sean Longstaff at Newcastle United. His contract is up summer 2025. And we've got a question from Davey, who lives in Prideaux. He's emailed in to say, Sean Longstaff is coming in for a lot of criticism, but surely he's worthy of a new deal, not only for the squad depth, but also the potential sell on value.
Yeah, I'm just pretty baffled by, as you say, the reaction on social media. The fact that we're even talking about this as a question. To think that, as I've just mentioned, Sean Longstaff, who played the 4th highest amount of games for Newcastle United last season, should be allowed to go on a free in the world of PSR is actually ludicrous. It's laughable. Why on earth would that happen? Of course, they're going to give him a new deal. They've got a time down to a new deal.
I've been talking about Oliver Skip, and he went to Leicester for, what was it, 25, 30 million pounds. I'll be honest. The reason I would give him a new deal right now would be for the profit they could make on selling them in the future.
But also, has he not earned a new contract?
It's an interesting question. Like,
come on, look. He's not flashy, you know. He does the simple stuff. He offers a lot off the ball. He's the unsung hero in Eddie Howe. You can't tell me he hasn't deserved a new contract.
Where is it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but I'm sorry, and people won't like it because, as I said on Monday, it's the trendy thing to do to just blast Sean Longstaff. We've spoken about it for months. He's the scapegoat of this team. But to even consider letting him go on a free, to not give him a new contract, it is ludicrous. It's mental.
If I was handing the contracts out, I would hold off until December. Obviously, you can start talking to teams come January, but just to give him a bit of an added incentive, say, Sean, come on, you know, show us that you're worthy of a new deal at Newcastle United. I think just to hand one out without him maybe pushing himself to the next level would be a little bit of an easy ride for sure. Look, he was good in parts that last season. He came for a bit of criticism. He was playing through the injuries, but he added goals to his game, and I'd like to see more of that. You know, them runs that he was making. He did it against PSG, didn't he? And he heading down the kind of the right side of the midfield. But I would just hold off on giving him that new deal just to see if he can push himself a little bit more. Obviously, it'll become a little bit harder if the midfield changes to the midfield that everyone expects it to in the next few months. But certainly in terms of the world of PSR, I mean, letting a homegrown player go for free in the summer would be bordering on criminal. Letting him go for 8 or 10 million in January would also be totally wrong in my view. You want to give him a new deal. It would have to be something along the lines of a 2 to maybe 3 year deal, which wouldn't please everyone. But if it's not wild wages, then you can look to sell him in a year's time, 18 months' time, and it's pure profit, and that all adds to the pot.
Well, that's it. Even if Eddie Howe doesn't see, you know, a future for Sean Longstaff, which I think he does, he's given us no evidence to suggest that he's in any hurry to drop Sean Longstaff, despite the clamour for it on social media. Even if he doesn't see a future for him, as you say, you know, PSR rules all now, and if you can get 50 million for a player next summer or the summer after, then you do it, because, as you say, it's pure profit. He's from the academy. But yeah, it just goes to show the reaction on social media saying that, you know, he should be given a contract is just what we've come to expect with Sean Longstaff.
I also think he'd be very, very important for that squad depth. He's not going to be, in a perfect world, your number one choice because of the options you've got. I also think they could do going to roll ground, maybe with a defensive midfielder coming in. But in terms of him, Jacob Murphy, you know, they're not top class Premier League players, but what they are top class squad players, and that's going to be really important going forward if they get back into Europe, if they want to give the cups a proper go. They're not average players by any stretch of the imagination. They are good Premier League players. Okay, they're not world beaters, but I think sometimes people forget about how important squad depth is, and that's what Sean Longstaff can offer. And I tell you what, if you also offer him a place in this squad and you say to him, okay, you might not be first choice week in, week out, but you've got a massive part to play coming off the bench, changing games, cup games. You give him the incentive, and obviously the door's always open as well for you to actually get in the first team. He'll want to be part of that journey.
Yeah, and again, I just have to look at the evidence of the last 2 seasons. He's played pretty much more than any other player in that position. We're not talking about someone who's been a squad player. I know further down the line, if Newcastle want to grow and kick on, I'm not saying that he's the answer long term. But I think it's criminal to talk about him in this way, that they should be even contemplating letting him go on a free. And just to throw a hypothetical situation into the mix, if Joe Willock was injured or picked up an injury at Molineux and Sean Longstaff wasn't in that squad, you are down again to Tonali, Bruno, and Joelinton. So they need options in the middle.
Well, before coming into the studio, I did tweet out that the reaction to news or reports that Sean Longstaff was going to be offered a new deal has been interesting. I made the point about not letting him leave on a free, and also the squad depth point that I've just made there. I've had a few replies since recording has begun. I'll read through some of them. We've got Jack saying, let him walk for free and he won't have any club in the top 16 of the Premier League trying to sign him. Would be clubs in the high end of the championship fighting over him. Bang average at best. Jack, I've got to say, I totally disagree with you. He's much better than the championship, and he could certainly do a job in any of those teams aiming between 6th and 10th without a shadow of a doubt. There would definitely be teams towards the bottom of the Premier League after Sean Longstaff if he was on a free. Most certainly if he was on a free.
I mean, he's started the last 2 seasons in a team that's finished 4th and finished 7th. So.
But you're bringing up the stats there. Michael says, imagine the reaction if he were allowed to leave on a free in the summer. He shouldn't be first choice, but he's too valuable to let go for nothing. Some people think the squad should be made up of 25 world-class players, which is exactly the point that I'm making. People have got to understand you're not going to get a squad of 25 world-class players. It's just not going to happen because of the money, because, these world-class players will not want to sit and be second, third choice. So players like Sean Longstaff, who give their all, are really, really important. Pablo says, agree, next summer we will have to replace 6+ players who are leaving. So best keeping Sean and using the money elsewhere. Alistair says he's not good enough to take us to where we want to be. Should have been sold under Bruce and Pardew. Wasn't around, was he? He would have been in the youth academy under Pardew, I think. But
Rafa brought him in.
Yeah, Rafa broke in. He would have been, 13, 14 under Pardew. So, but yeah, it says he should have been sold under Bruce. Yes, he's pure profit, but that's about it. Give him an 18-month contract and sell him for pure profit and get someone who's past mid-table quality. Tommy says absolutely letting a 26-year-old homegrown player leave for free would be bad business. Yeah. Alan says spot on. Like Murphy, a great squad player. Yeah. Toon Gaff says, when was the last time he had a good game? He should consider himself more vulnerable in terms of PSR anyway, as an academy product, and his performances are not doing him any favours. But Howe obviously rates him. That's a decision that will have to go above Howe's head. And we've got Deanne said he's not a squad player. He's a starter every single game, and that's the problem. Do you think if Sean Longstaff wasn't starting week in, week out, and we have to also say that with the knowledge that he's probably starting week in, week out because Tonali's been banned for 10 months and Joe Willock's been injured. So it'd be really interesting to see if he would be a starting player week in, week out if everyone was fit and available. But do you think if he was more of a squad player now, he's more of a bench player now, and he's been introduced for 20 minutes to go to show up the game, that talk of him getting a new deal would be more welcomed than it is as a current first team player?
100%. People, as I say, he's not a flashy player. He sometimes does go under the radar. Sometimes games pass him by. I'm not gonna sit here and says, he's fantastic every game. But I think people are now looking at it as a Newcastle team that wants to go forward, and they've still got this player who many perceive to be a squad player, starting for them week in, week out. That might change, as we say, going forward with Sandro Tonali. It might not. It didn't last season when he started the season with Tonali, Bruno, and Joelinton in the middle. And it was very quickly that Sean Longstaff was brought back into the team, even before Tonali got banned. So we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if that midfield three can work together. But I do think if he was a squad player, that the reaction would have been significantly less than what it has been.
And there's also been a bit of talk on social media because a well-known fan said, if you look at what Bruno does, he doesn't get half as much criticism. Sean gets it because he's a local lad. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but do you think there's a point in there? It's because he's a local lad and he's not maybe as flashy or as good on the eyes as Bruno, that Bruno gets away with a bit more, and Sean, the first time he makes a mistake, first time he lets a pass go astray, he gets it.
I'm not sure if it's got anything to do with him being a local lad. I think it's because of the quality of the two players, isn't it? Bruno is a much better midfielder. He's a more well-rounded midfielder. He probably has a better rapport with the fans, and he's £100 million player who they don't want to go. There's very little criticism of Bruno, even when he does deserve it sometimes, because let's face it, he's not perfect, despite the fact he's very, 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 very good. I don't know. I think we're always going to have this thing. I think it's rumbled on for years. It will rumble on for years of Sean Longstaff getting this type of, I'm not going to say abuse, but this type of feeling on social media.
Criticism.
Yeah. And I don't think we'll ever really get past it unless, he suddenly turns into an absolute world beater, which we can't really see happening.
It's funny, doesn't it? Because I think Sean Longstaff's biggest flaw is that sometimes he's not aware of what's around him and he can dilly-dally on the ball and then he gets caught in possession. But as you know, one of our biggest frustrations is Bruno when he does 100%. Them really clever, he wins the fouls. And then every time he does that, I think he's very lucky because
panicking.
There was one against Tottenham and it wasn't a foul in my view. Very late on, it's the same against Southampton. And I just think if Sean Longstaff was doing that, and even though he was winning the fouls, would we be celebrating and cheering it? I'm not too sure. But of course, there's elements of Sean's game that he needs to improve on. Hopefully, in the next few months, he can prove to those who are making the decisions and to those critics and the fan base that he's worthy of a new deal. But certainly, at least from a PSR point of view, I think he has to be offered a new deal. Remember to hit that subscribe button. Remember to get into the comments. Now, we've got a question from John Steele who says, I'm concerned that we're poor at corners, bearing in mind that we have great headers of the ball like Cher and Burn. Why is that?
Yeah, well, Newcastle United have famously gone through long patches in the past of not scoring from corners. There was obviously that famous one against Pardew, and even under Pardew, and even when Eddie Howe came in, there was a really prolonged period of not scoring from set pieces. Now, as John mentioned in the comment, they've got Lloyd Kelly, they've got Dan Burn, they've got Alexander Isak, they've got big players that they can really use in these situations. Now, what we're not seeing at the minute is these really surprising, really creative routines that we saw last season under Jason Tindall, where he was getting loads of praise from it. We were trying to look for the stat, weren't we, off air, about when Newcastle's last goal was from a corner, and I think we worked out it was April against Tottenham. They've had 60 corners in the last 10 games in the Premier League, and they haven't scored from them. They're creating plenty. They had 7 corners against Wolves, 7 against Tottenham, 9 against Bournemouth. So they are creating corners, and they've got some fantastic set-piece takers on the pitch. Kieran Trippier, when he's on, Sandro Tonali can take them. Anthony Gordon is arguably, or he has been in the last couple of months, arguably the best dead ball specialist at the club. So why isn't it working? They've got tall players. They've got some good set-piece takers. I think we need to see Newcastle go back to those routines that were really creative, off the cusp. I always remember that one where Bruno slips around the back post and scores at the Leazes. We need to see that because we haven't really seen them this season, have we?
No, I think they're just not beating the first man half the time with a delivery, whether from a free kick in a dangerous position, whether it be from a corner, and that's not good enough. You should be beating the first man, because if you don't, then what's the point in even trying to do so?
I think that was one of the big criticisms of Kieran Trippier last season, wasn't it? When his form dipped, it wasn't just that his performance in the game dipped. His set pieces really, really, took a downturn. His corners weren't hitting the first man. He wasn't having the same success with free kicks.
The first involvement on Sunday against Wolves, he had I think it was a free kick. He ran over, took the ball off Anthony Gordon. In fact, it might have been a corner actually. He put it in the box, cleared away straight away off the first man. It's not good enough, because John is right. There's so many tall players in this side that we need to be seeing good delivery into the box. And to be fair, I know what you're saying about the creativeness of the set pieces, which led to a few goals the season before last. But for me, when you've got people like Dan Burn, when you've got people like Lloyd Kelly in the box, just old-fashioned corner, get it into the mixer and get someone's head on. You know, yes, it's great when all these clever little routines come off and it shows that the training ground practice is working and it's good on the eye. But for me, when you've got tall players there waiting who we know can head a ball, just put it in the middle of the box. That's what you need to do. Let's not be flashy. Just do it the good old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I would agree. And as we said, the last one they did score, Tottenham at home, was Anthony Gordon taking a corner, whipping it in. Fabian Schär, who was not the best in the air at all, he headed it in. So yeah, definitely something to work on the training ground.
From one centre back that you've mentioned there, Fabian Schär, to another who very nearly ended up in a shirt of Newcastle United. Or did he? Perhaps it was all just a smoke screen. We're going to talk about Marc Guehi now, because a lot of the questions over email have been about the Crystal Palace defender and whether Newcastle United's decision not to pay £70 million for him, £70 million plus, it would have been, is proving to be the right one. This comes on the back of the game against Leicester City over the weekend, where Marc Guehi was embarrassed by Jamie Vardy. How old is Jamie Vardy?
Mid-30s, 35, 36, I don't know.
You know,
I'm going to get it up because I don't want to do Jamie.
I want to say 37. He's not 37 though. He's 34, is he?
It's 37.
He is 37.
Jesus, yeah, I didn't think he was that old.
So embarrassed by 37-year-old by 37-year-old Jamie Vardy. Now look, I think he's still a very good defender. I think he would have been an absolute brilliant addition for Newcastle United. And you don't just become a bad player overnight. He's clearly been distracted by all of the rumours and the gossip and the interest from Newcastle United, because it was concrete. You know, what to say, he wasn't looking on Rightmove. Other apps are available, you know, looking for a house. Think, you know, is this area nice? Is Ousburn a nice place to go? It is. But what to say, he wasn't thinking about the future on Tyneside, and then it didn't happen. And he's the captain of Crystal Palace, and their season hasn't been brilliant. He's going to come in for a bit of stick. Yes, it wasn't a great performance against Crystal Palace. More than one mistake. Against Leicester City. More than one mistake in that game. But are Newcastle United been proved? Is Paul Mitchell been proved right by not going and meeting Crystal Palace's valuation of him?
I think on that, yes, and I think, I mean, look, as you say, it's too early to write off Marc Guehi as a Newcastle United signing. You know, as you say, you don't turn into a bad defender overnight. He's a very, very good defender. He's had a very busy summer. You know, not only just with England, but with all this swirling around his head. Palace have had, you know, a pretty average start of the season. He hasn't been very good. You know, I don't think we can sit here and say, you know, Newcastle definitively made the right decision not to sign him. I think what it does show, though, is two things. I think at the minute, Newcastle look like they've made the right decision not paying that much for him. I don't think he looks like a £7 million defender. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, he never looked like a £70 million defender. And I think the Euros helped that. And I think Palace were trying to really, really stretch the limits of what they could get with him. What I also think it shows, the second thing, is it puts huge pressure on Crystal Palace now, because you've got a player who is in the final 18 months of his contract. There's nothing to say that he's going to sign that deal at Crystal Palace to extend. Palace really, if they were smart, should have sold in the summer, because the only chance you've got now to sell him if he doesn't sign a new contract is January. And if Marc Guehi continues to play like this, getting outpaced by 37-year-old strikers, nobody's going to pay $70 million from in January. So it's too early to write him off. I still think he would be a very welcome addition at Newcastle United. Maybe Newcastle have played a masterstroke, because when they offer him Palace 40 in January and they get him, we'll all be happy about it. But I don't know. It puts massive pressure on Palace, and he is a player badly out of form at the minute.
Low on confidence, it seems. I think it would only be right to make a judgment once his head is cleared of everything that's been going on. So give him a couple of months, get into November, and then see where he's at with his performances, because I certainly still think Newcastle will go back in January. You've got the contract issues, as you've mentioned. I'm quite surprised, actually, that we haven't seen a new deal from him yet at Crystal Palace, because if I was Steve Parish, that's exactly what I would be doing, sticking a big release clause, which gives him his out, but also gives Crystal Palace a set amount. And I do think Newcastle will go back in for him, but the comments that I got to a tweet over the weekend, because I mentioned the game against Leicester City. I asked how much he would be worth now.
Let me guess.
90,
Nothing.
94 replies.
Okay.
And then quite a few of them said Newcastle shouldn't go back in for him. Quite a few said they wouldn't be dealing with Palace again. So that bridge has been burnt. And we had one person saying £30 million is what he'd be worth. The lad is good, but he's not £70 million good. His head has been scrambled, which I think we can all accept. Andrew says, hopefully we've either dodged a £75 million bullet, or he's so distraught about not being allowed to leave, it's seriously affecting his confidence and concentration. Hopefully the latter. £40 million in January will probably get him now. Deadpool's Love Child, which is a very good handle, says, not me. I'll be disappointed if we go back from in January. Bobby says, I think just because you have one good season doesn't mean you're a great player. Time and time again, players have one great season, and after that, they play very average, either with or without a move. I feel you need a player to have consistently great seasons to invest in them. And it's interesting because even before this season started and Guéhi's form has dipped quite severely, there was still quite a large portion of the fan base who were really not sure about Guéhi, even before you start talking about £70 million. You know, even if you're talking 40, 50, 60 million pounds, there was a large part of the fan base saying, is it really worth that? I know me and you were big fans of the proposed move because we do think he's still a very good defender. But it's really intriguing to see that there were so many people that weren't too sure then, and that's probably increased now because of what's happened in the opening weeks of the season.
Yeah, and I think that'll only grow if he doesn't, reverse that form before January. It's going to be so intriguing to see whether Newcastle United go back, because they got so close, or it looked like they were getting so close to getting over the line in the summer. Then there's got to be that temptation to try and pounce and get him again in January. But as we say, it depends on whether he gets offered a new deal. It depends on his form, because as you say, if he keeps this up, then there isn't going to be too many suitors in January, unless you're half in that £70 million.
I'd say what the majority of people there have
valuation.
said £30 to £40 million in January. I mean, that's still not a little amount, is it? That's still quite a big price tag.
Yeah.
Do you think Steve Parish is regretting his decision a little bit? It's difficult, isn't it? Because if he is, you look at it and say, well, where's the confidence that he's going to come good again? Because if you've got confidence in the player, you'll be sitting there thinking, okay, I said no to £70 million, but I know that we can get him a signed new deal, £100 million release clause. It's going to be worth it.
I don't think he'll be regretting the decision. I think he'll be looking at it as we've kept, one of our best players who is now club captain, in the face of real pressure in the same season in the same summer that we lost, someone massive like Michael Olise, albeit in a different position. So I don't think he'll be regretting it, but I think he will be extremely aware of what lies ahead and what happens in January in terms of who comes in from, how much they're going to be willing to pay from, the fact that they need to really get him tied down. And look, for all we know, Marc Guehi saying behind the scenes that I don't want to sign a new contract. I want it to go in the summer, and I want to go again. So it's fascinating, but first and foremost for Marc Guehi, he needs to pick his form up. Otherwise, it's hard to see Newcastle going back in at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I think even with my hamstrings, I could have given him a good test on Saturday. If I'm being quite honest with him, it was embarrassing to watch. And then he miskicks the ball as well.
I mean, it wasn't just Saturday against Leicester. He's had a really, really poor start of the season, the first 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, it's a shame to see, but I am backing him to get back to form. I do think Newcastle United will go back in January, but at a reduced amount.
Well, just to change topic slightly, I've got TweetDeck open here, and somebody else has just replied to your Sean Longstaff tweet from before and said he's the perfect squad player for the next 3 years. Obviously, he's not on the level of our other midfield players, but he ticks a lot of boxes, and that's what we need in our squad. That's from the Black and White Sheep. I think he's hit the nail on the head.
He certainly has. Let us know in the comments what you think about Marc Guéhi. Would you like to see Newcastle United go back in for him in January? We know with Newcastle United that they have a list of targets, and they very, very rarely deviate from those targets. If they don't get one summer, they'll go back in the summer after. We've seen it with several players who've come good for Newcastle United. And as we said at the start of the point about Guéhi, you do not become a bad player overnight. So let's hope the lad does get back to form and Newcastle United go back in and manage to maybe get themselves a bargain. One of the things doing the rounds over the last few days, which is not necessarily Newcastle United point, but it's a more general point when it comes to football, is the football fixture schedule. Now, obviously, the Champions League has returned. It's revamped. You've got the League Cup going on at the same time. And Rodri of Manchester City fame, probably, arguably, well, actually, most certainly, the best midfielder in the world.
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic player.
Ballon d'Or winner in my eyes, I think.
Has said that the players, not just Man City players, but I think players across the game are close to going on strike because of the footballing schedule. Now, cynics would say, wait there, you're paid £350,000 a week. You get on with it, son. You've got access to the best doctors, the best gyms, the best pools. You fly private jets. You go on the most comfy trains and chauffeur-driven cars. What on earth have you got to complain about? The more understanding football fan would maybe say, yeah, we can understand where you're coming from because there is just game after game after game. What's your take on the threat of strike action?
Well, I do agree with the sorry, let me think how I phrase this. Before I get jumped on, I do understand people's points about, you know, you paid so much money, you've got such a cushy life compared to everyone else, but also football is becoming a little bit of a joke in terms of how many games players are playing now. Newcastle last season in the Champions League, that was the only competition that they played that they won't play this season, sorry. And, you know, Bruno played 50 games, Gordon played 48, Shaw 47. This is for just for their clubs. Longstaff 46, Miggy 45, which I was a bit surprised at, and Byrne 43. That's quite a hefty season, but it's probably, in the modern game, it's probably understandable. Manchester City and potentially Chelsea, because of this brand new tournament that we were all crying out for, the 32 club FIFA Club World Cup next summer that we all want to see next summer when we're not sick of Premier League football. Chelsea and City could potentially play 85 games next season. I mean, that is crazy. And, you know, we've seen the changes this week with the new Champions League, which a lot of people aren't happy with. And why would you be? The Champions League for me is the perfect competition. It's been the best competition in football for years. There's nothing I want to change about it. Nobody was calling for change, were they really? And you've added more teams into it. You added a new league format where you play 8 games rather than 6 in the league now. And it's all for money. It's all for commercial revenue. This Club World Cup from FIFA is for money.
I thought the Club World Cup used to be in January because didn't Manchester United
used to be in December and January, didn't it? But they've changed it now, and it only used to be. I think it was literally 6 or 8 teams, wasn't it? Yeah. You played once or twice.
Well, it's supposed to 2 weeks. So wasn't it?
Yeah,
staying up later. What I think Corinthians.
Yeah, yours had Brazilian teams and South, Asian teams in it. But yeah, next June the inaugural.
It's interesting because I remember Manchester United withdrawn from the FA Cup to play that competition. Yeah. I think it was the year 2000 round about.
There was that famous Mirror front page, wasn't there, where they had all the celebrities chiming in about it. Yeah.
And the criticism they got quite rightly was massive because the FA Cup was the best cup competition in the world, and it's so there's just something about it. The cup I'd love Newcastle United to win, but the point about players striking, I mean, our club's going to start choosing the more lucrative competition when it comes to money, given that the PSR rules are starting to really, really affect how clubs spend money. Are we going to start to see clubs maybe suggest, we'll not play in the League Cup, or if we do, we'll play our most youthful side because this other club competition is much more lucrative to us, even if it's not, as prestigious as the FA Cup, but it means more money in our pocket.
Of course, I think we've already started to see that in the last couple of years. I mean, this is maybe being a little bit cynical, but the fact Jurgen Klopp never used to turn up to his League Cup press conferences used to really annoy me. He used to send out pep lingers at Liverpool, and he was famous for always playing the kids because of this, fixation he had with Liverpool's fixture list and playing too many games. Manchester City, for all they win it every year, they are not going to be too bothered if they are not, winning the League Cups every season because they've got much bigger fish to fry. But just to bring it back to Newcastle as well, and obviously they're not playing the Club World Cup next year. They're not in the Champions League this year. But just last season alone, all the injuries they had, all the matches they had, all the added travelling, added pressures they had, and then again for lucrative reasons, they're finishing the season at Brentford and they're flying straight to Australia. Then they're coming home and they're going to Germany to have a tour around the Adidas thing. Then they're flying out to Japan. John Gibson, if he's listening to this, will be screaming at the TV that it's not an excuse. But all that traveling in the summer, after a really hard season, it is difficult for the players. And I just think for players at City and Chelsea, someone like Rodri, who's been at the Euros and who will play every game of importance for City, asking them to play 60, 70, 80 games a season is ludicrous. And we can't blame them if all of a sudden they're, I mean, we will blame them because it's our job to do it, and fans will never stop blaming them. But, you know, if Rodri puts in a stinker, people aren't going to be saying, oh, well, he's played 80 games, let him go. They'll be asking why he's not performing. And that is the reason.
And it's interesting, the players you mentioned from Newcastle United point of view, they went away to the Euros, to Copa America. We've already had an international bit. I mean, the Nations League is an absolute pointless competition as well. Like, we're only 2 weeks into the season. We already had a break. It's ridiculous. And the other thing it does as well, it makes an absolute mockery of football's so-called attempt to get net zero.
Yeah,
because
eco-friendly.
you're flying out with planes and even if you're going on trains and buses, you know, I mean, it's absolutely laughable. And just wait as well until the American owners within the Premier League try to suggest that 39th game happening, because it's obviously the topic about it has rose again with Wrexham versus Birmingham.
Yeah.
I know, and okay, that might be done more in a friendly kind of exhibition style, but you know, every so often the 39th game will once again rise to the surface, and there will be certain people at certain levels of the game thinking that's brilliant because it brings in revenue, it brings in exposure for the Premier League, but it makes a mockery of, like we say, the net energy aim, and also it's an insult to fans as well.
Again, just, I mean, we're going wildly off topic here, but even look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia. I mean, in the last 2 or 3 seasons, I'm pretty sure it's the Spanish Community Shield or the Italian Charity Shield is being played in Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is the way the game is heading, and I think, you know, we might, at the risk of sounding like, you know, old-fashioned, you know, I don't want to see Newcastle United competitive matches being played in Saudi Arabia. I want to see them at St James's Park or on the road in the UK. And equally, you know, I mean, I will not watch the Club World Cup. I've got no interest in it. I would have to watch it if Newcastle were in it because of my job, but I would still feel a little bit, you know, what is this all about? You know, so, but that is the game. That is the way the game's going. That is the way football is going. You know, it's all about money, 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 and the players are the least of those priorities.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it? Because the clubs need to make more money because of the financial rules. So it's just going to go round and round until they come to a solution. But the new Champions League format reminds me of, you know, when you used to go on FIFA and you couldn't really be bothered to play a full campaign. So what you do, you just create your own little league with all the top clubs in, and you play that for a few weeks. That's what it reminds us of. It's literally like someone's put it together on a computer or a PlayStation. It is somewhat laughable. It didn't need to change. I think we've also changed the theme music as well.
Yeah, I was going to. I feel like we've got a topic, a question coming up about the Champions League, and I had this note written down, but I'll say it now. The new how can you get the Champions League anthem wrong? What if anything didn't need it? If change the Champions League all you want, the format of it, but not the anthem, not the iconic anthem.
I was watching back the clips from the PSG game,
and the AC Milan San Siro game.
Oh, it's like when we heard that at St James's Park for the first time, it was up there with that first game of the new era. You know, it was quite emotional. When you hear the new one, it's just like it didn't need to be changed.
Yeah, it's a really subtle change, but it's noticeably worse, isn't it? Yeah.
But at least we got
it.
Yeah. Aston Villa fans. Anyway, the question that we had about the Champions League was how important and crucial is it that Newcastle United take advantage of not having a congested fixture list this season, if indeed they are going to get back into Europe for the season after this one?
Yeah, it's huge. Look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I did watch Aston Villa last night, and it was hard to watch because I was like, should be us. I want it back.
Only 7 points off them in the end.
I was just sat there thinking that needs to be us next season. I miss it. Old anthem or not, I miss it. But the one positive of it is that Newcastle need to now, you know, capitalise on the fact that they're only going to have for large swathes of the season, especially if they don't go far in the domestic cups, which we hope they do. They're going to have a lot of weeks where you're playing Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be huge when you've got Chelsea on a Thursday and a Sunday. You've got City traveling all around the world. They need to capitalise on it, and you only have to look at the season when Newcastle finished fourth, where they didn't have those added pressures of travelling and they didn't have the injury worries, to see how good they were under Eddie Howe when he had time on the pitch with them on the training pitch.
Does it put a bit more pressure on Eddie Howe because he hasn't got the excuse? Not that he ever used it, because he didn't ever use it, but he hasn't got the excuse of a congested fixture list.
Yeah, well, we were saying, weren't we, after the FA Cup final in the summer, or even towards back in the last season, it puts pressure on Howe. They're not getting Europe. One, because they need to get back in, because that's what the Saudis want, and that's what we all want, and that's what Newcastle, need to be aiming for. But also, as you say, there is no excuses of, well, we were travelling back from the San Siro and we're playing early on a Saturday, and the players were tired. Not that he ever used that, as you say, as an excuse, but there is none of that now. And if they get knocked out of the League Cup on Wednesday at Wimbledon, which we hope don't happen, that is one game a week until January, till the FA Cup starts. It's huge.
Tuesday,
sorry,
Tuesday.
not Wednesday.
Don't worry. I think many people do actually think it's a Wednesday. Don't turn up 24 hours late; you'll regret it. Does it also, though, kind of reaffirm the regret that I think a lot of Newcastle United fans have about the transfer window? Because it is the perfect season to get back in the top four. Even whisper it quietly, maybe a title challenge if they beat Man City. I know. Tie me ankles down. I'm floating off with optimism. But, there's a lot that Newcastle United can achieve this season. We know a lot of top clubs don't take the League Cup seriously. So can Newcastle United get to that final? The FA Cup is another chance. Look how they've gone so far, and they're not even playing that well at all. Imagine what they could have done with a right winger, with a centre-back, with maybe even a third striker. We'll not go down that road again. But does it kind of just leave people thinking, man, what could have been?
Yeah, 100%. And not only because of the possibilities for Newcastle to capitalise this season, but also because you look at that squad, and Eddie Howe alluded to it against Tottenham, or maybe it was actually Wolves. He basically said, every fit player we have, senior player, is here today. They are only really a couple of injuries away still, despite the fact everyone's back. They're only a couple of injuries away from being really hampered again. So for those two reasons, it does leave that little sour taste in the mouth about what could have been in the summer, but there's nothing they can do about it now. They need to kick on. They need to improve their performances, get those plans ready for January. We don't want to be sat here deadline day in January saying they've been at the negotiating table for Marc Guehi for 4 weeks. Why have they not got that deal? Just pay the money.
I'm going to hold in.
So yeah, it's a shame about the summer. One game a week, though, potentially max 2, is going to be crucial.
We've got 2 questions that relate sort of towards the transfer window that was. One person has asked, has Harvey Barnes' emergence reduced the need for a right winger?
Good question.
I don't think it has. Simply because neither him nor Gordon are
out and out right wingers,
on their right. And for me, you still need someone who's just naturally at home on that right flank. There's no point having a stopgap. I mean, if it's a stopgap till January and then you go and get someone like Brian Abermo, or they go back in for Anthony Langer, then fine. I'm happy for that for the next few months. But if that's the long-term plan for me, it just doesn't work. I think it's a really interesting and it's a difficult one for Eddie Howe to get right, because Harvey Barnes is brilliant out on the left, but Anthony Gordon too. Like, who does he play out on the left? Because whoever he plays out on the left, the person who doesn't play there, if he has to play on the right, is not as good as they are on the left. It's like, it's a mind scramble.
He will. It's Eddie Howe. He might surprise us again.
Just plays 2 wingers on the left.
I mean, yeah, potentially. I don't think we'll see Harvey Barnes on the right for Newcastle, because history suggests he just doesn't play there. He hasn't really had a prolonged period on that side of the pitch since 2017, when he was at MK Dons on loan. At West Brom, he played through the middle. At Leicester, he was predominantly on the left, if not always on the left. And Anthony Gordon, actually, when you look back at his career, I mean, the season before he left Everton, I think he played more on the right than he did on the left. So he can do it. Eddie Howe speaks often about the versatility that he offers, the fact he can play anywhere across the front 3. We won't go for that old groundabout and playing through the middle. So Gordon is the versatile one out of the two of them. Harvey Barnes is very much, you stick him on the left, he'll probably score your goals, he'll probably get your assist. Anthony Gordon offers a little bit more. He'll be the man on the right. To go back to that person's question, anybody who knows me and has watched this podcast knows that the big thing I wanted in the summer, I've wanted for years, is a shiny new right winger. They still haven't got it. This isn't the answer going forward. It's a very good stopgap. It's a very welcome decision for how to have. I don't actually mind going on the right. I prefer him on the left, but if he's got to go on the right, so be it. But longer term, they definitely still need somebody to to upgrade at right wing.
Interesting transfer market doesn't even list the right side for Harvey Barnes. It does for Anthony Gordon, but I think if you ask both of them, they'd both say we'd prefer to play out on the left. So someone is going to be left unhappy. The other question that came in was about left back. Now, this has come from, funny enough, someone called Kelly. His message in to say there's a lot of praise coming in for Lewis Hall, but does the fact that Howe keeps alternating between Hall and Kelly suggest that United still need a top quality left back?
I think the jury's still out on whether they still need to go out and buy a top quality left back. I don't think anyone would grumble at it, but I think how good would it be to see Lewis Hall become that out and out left back and to make that position his own? Obviously, we're not there yet. And again, it goes back to that debate we always have about where in the priority list it ranks. I don't think it ranks very high because you've got two very, very good options there now. But I don't think we can really answer that question until we've seen what Lewis Hall can do with a full season under Eddie Howe, with a full season in the team. I don't think Lloyd Kelly is the answer at left back going forward, full time, long term. But Lewis Hall very much could be. But I also say that knowing that there's still vulnerabilities in his game and there's still teething problems and things he needs to iron out defensively. But they've got two very good options there. And as we said earlier in the show, it's anyone's guess who starts on Saturday and going forward, which is great to see. Big season for Lewis Hall. Do we get to the stage this time next year where we're sat here in the summer window going, they need to really upgrade someone because Lewis Hall hasn't kicked on. They need Lewis Hall to be the squad player like Longstaff, should be, like Jacob Murphy should be. Did they go out and sign someone like Theo Hernandez at AC Milan, who they were linked with in the past?
If someone offered you Theo Hernandez tomorrow, though,
snap your hand off from 100%.
I suppose they're the tough decisions that are going to have to be made.
But also, just saying that, if somebody offered me Donnarumma tomorrow, I'd say yes. So there is positions in that team where, of course, they could be upgraded. I mean, centre back, you could arguably say if someone offered you a real good, Marc Guehi for one, and a really good centre back, they would probably come in over Fabian Schär and Dan Burn long term. So Theo Hernandez is probably a bad example to use because I think anyone in the world would take him. But I think it really depends how much we see Lewis Hall kick on this summer as to whether Eddie Howe thinks, right, actually, I need to add a left back to the shopping list.
I think he's definitely got huge potential. But
of course
it's really interesting that John Anderson, obviously former Newcastle United player, BBC co-commentator, has said on BBC Radio Newcastle this week that he's not too sure about Hall playing at left back. There's holes in his defensive play. But of course, he's got time to develop. No one's going to make a rush decision on him. And if his future's not left back, I think he's definitely a player from an attacking point of view because I think everyone's been really impressed with him going forward. It's defensively where he's getting caught out, getting rammed past. He doesn't quite know where to be positional wise when a player's run at him. There's a lot of points of his game defensively which need to improve, but certainly going forward, he's looked really, really comfortable. So maybe it is something in 6 months' time, a year's time, where maybe Eddie Howe goes, maybe you're not left back, but you can 100%. Play further up the field.
Or in the middle.
Yeah, or exactly. That's where your future is. I certainly don't think we're talking about it being make or break at Newcastle United as a left back.
No, 100%. What I mean by that is I think if Lewis Hall can kick on the season, have a really good season at left back, it completely takes away the need to, or the urgent need to go out and sign someone at left back. But I do think there's still holes in his game. I don't think he's certain. I mean, at the minute, no one would really be surprised if he dropped out of the team on Saturday for Lloyd Kelly because Lloyd Kelly's done really well. So look, I would look at it as a positive. You've got two really good options there. But I think longer term, it poses the question that maybe there's a spot up there for grabs for someone, or also for someone to come in and take that place and make it their own.
Penultimate question then, and it's about the future of some of Newcastle United's players who have been here a long time, and we've had quite a few questions kind of homing in on the same point, which is basically, have Newcastle United got the people to make the really tough decisions when it comes to getting rid of some of the players who are felt more or looked upon more fondly, and there's a bit more of an emotive connection. So you're talking about the likes of Dan Burn, Jacob Murphy, Sean Longstaff, because I think there's a lot of love for a lot of players, but we're getting to the stage where some tough decisions are going to have to be made. Dan Burn's contract, for example, is something that's going to have to be discussed. I would give him a new deal, but as the club progresses, those tough decisions are going to have to come, and they're going to have to be made. And do you think Eddie Howe and the other people making decisions are capable of doing that?
Yes, I think they are. Eddie Howe has this perception of having his favourites and being too nice or too loyal to some of the squad players. But I would also say, well, if I was in Eddie Howe's shoes, I'd say, well, we've just finished up fourth and missed out by a whisker on Europe with Sean Longstaff and Dan Burn playing over 40 games. Miguel Almiron, love him, I hate him, carried us to the top four for a big chunk of that season. I know I'm sort of going back a couple of seasons now. I don't think it's, we're not playing Football Manager. It's not as easy as saying, right, well, Burn, Longstaff, Murphy, Almiron all need to go in the summer. That is a huge task to replace all those players who have played a lot of games under Eddie Howe. The hope in the ideal world is that all these players that we've mentioned become squad players. They get phased out of the first team because Newcastle improve and sign players of real note, which they hope they were going to do in the summer, and they didn't. But I think, going back to the question, I think Eddie Howe is ruthless enough to do it. And I think Paul Mitchell definitely is. I think you only have to go back to the comments he made to us less than 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago today, where he said he was asked about Gordon, Isak, Bruno, and he basically said, we want to keep them, but also, I've been at every club where we've had to sell players and it's never had a negative. He knows he's the finance man ultimately, and he knows PSR wise, Newcastle, the money they will get for those players, they can reinvest it. So I think he's definitely ruthless enough.
Well, that's the extreme of that kind of question, isn't it? This person was asking more about the emotional connection of the likes of Murphy, Burn, Longstaff. But on the flip side of that is you are going to have to sell a star at some point to help fund your next step in the progress or the progression of the club. And that's going to hit a lot of people, but fans have to be prepared for that.
And it's about how you react to that as well, because let's just say Bruno had left this summer for 100 million. Of course, it would have been terrible. But it's how you react to that, because remember when West Ham sold Declan Rice for 100 million? They reinvested it so well. They brought Alvarez from Ajax. They brought Kudus from Ajax as well. Yeah. Anyway, they spent
those two players would get into this Newcastle United
exactly. Well, they spent the Declan Rice money on 3 or 4 really good squad lifting players. You can then also say, well, look, Tottenham sold Gareth Bale and they signed, Soldado and really rubbish signings. But I would trust Paul Mitchell with 100 million in his back pocket from Bruno or whoever it might be, Gordon or Isak. As much as I don't want them to go, I'm not saying that. I'm
just checking who was sporting director at that time.
Yeah, hopefully not Paul Mitchell. Yeah, I might have just dug myself a hole there. You know what? It probably would be the same.
Not the trip. Well, not a trip. I'm just going to double check because that would just be funny.
Fantastic.
Let me just. Oh no, it's all right. Mitchell completed his switch in November 2004. I think Bale went this summer.
Yeah. Bale went a couple of seasons earlier, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, it just goes to show my point. What I was trying to make was
with the right man in charge, with the budget, with the right recruitment team, you can sell your biggest stars and then go to the next level by reinvesting.
Exactly, 100%. And that was what Mitchell was alluding to in that conversation with us when he said, it's not all doom and gloom selling these players. We can reinvest it really well. Just before people jump at me in the comments, I am not saying I want us to sell and reinvest the money on Bruno, Gordon and Isak. You've got to keep them and build the squad around them. But put myself in Paul Mitchell's shoes who say, well, look, I've been at Tottenham, Southampton, Leipzig, all these clubs. We've sold big players and I back myself to spend that money wisely.
Last question then, and it is, if Newcastle United beat Fulham and then they managed to beat Manchester City, are they title contenders?
My heart really wants to say yes, because they haven't got Champions League football or any European distractions. But I just think the squad just isn't there yet. And I just think, let's not run before we can walk. I think they should be aiming for top 4. Top 4 is so doable. Ask me the same thing in January if they're in the top 3 and they're 5 points behind City, and I might give you a different answer. But until then, no, I think I think they'll finish top 4. I think they'll finish 4th, and I think.
But is that you coming to that verdict based on the opening 4 games of this season? Because because a lot of people, so for example, myself, I said top 4 this season if they add 2 players to the squad. They didn't.
Do you not think they'll get top 4?
I think there's a possibility they can if their stars stay injury free.
Will they finish top 4 or not? Don't sit on the fence.
Well, no, because there's elements of the season that need to work in their favour, isn't there? If their stars stay injury free, then I will say yes, top 4. But how likely is that? It's not,
Yeah, no, I do get that, and I agree. If the strengthened in the summer, I think I'd be even more confident there. I just think the top 3 this season really should be or will be City, Arsenal in some order. Liverpool, if Slot can get it right. And then I think you're looking at Newcastle, Chelsea, Manchester United, Spurs, and Villa all fighting for that one place. And every single club bar Newcastle in that group has got European football this season. Manchester United, I think, are not good enough under Ten Hag. Chelsea are an absolute basket case of a club. And for whatever reason, can't get it working at Spurs. Villa have got the Champions League, and that only leaves Newcastle United. So maybe I'm going heart over head, and maybe I'm being too confident. But I think everything's in place. If they can keep all their key players fit to get top 4 like they did the season before they got the Champions League.
There we go. Well, fingers crossed Aaron's optimism comes to reality. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. Just a reminder of the email address, theeibwpodcast@reachplc.com. Send your thoughts, comments, questions, feedback, whatever you like to me now, or any other guests and hosts that we have on the podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the show. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you on Monday for the Monday show.